Hi, this is Doug Levesque for the Bible Nation podcast, and this is part 2 of our Michigan Proposals publications, and this part is for Proposition 3, dealing with the legalization and expansion of abortion and abortion rights in Michigan. So please watch, communicate with us on what you feel about this, and then share this video, part 2 of Michigan Proposals, on Proposal 3. What are we standing up for? The ability, the freedom to do what's right as God defines that right.
God's the ultimate author of liberty.
We don't want government to stand between us and our freedom to do what is right.
Prop 3 in Michigan is the permanent legalization of abortion rights, the right to have an abortion, and also the enhancement of access to abortion laws. Mm-hmm. And so Michigan is a state that in 1931-32, we had a law that outlawed abortions. Mm-hmm. And when Roe v. Wade happened, then we were under, the federal guideline mandate, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't really a legalization. It just was the inability to prosecute, right, is what it was. And so when that got overturned, Roe v. Wade, that wasn't your right to an abortion. It wasn't the mandate to an abortion or whatever.
Gives it right back to the states.
Right, gives it back to the states. And so we've been in a fight in our state. And basically we've reverted back to 1930 laws. And so in the state of Michigan, as of right now, you shouldn't be able to have an abortion in the state. And so there's been fights going on about that. But Prop 3 will say you absolutely do have that right. And in fact, we're going to enhance the laws, but it really becomes mandates to make abortion an idol in the state, make it a sacred cow, and we are the state. All the states around Michigan, people come into Michigan and drive up and down I-75, stopping at every pot shop so they can get pot because other states don't have the legalization of pot. And so, Michiganders don't realize that. They might think it's everywhere. But Michigan, the industry is working great because all the states around are driving through Michigan just collecting pot, where they can. And then Michigan's getting the taxes from that. So when Whitmer says she wants to fix the roads, she's fixing it with pot tax, with whatever's going there.
And they're still not fixed.
Yeah. And so
there's a lot of road construction happening.
Yeah. There's a lot of road construction
Since the last
happening.
3 months, it's like, man, there's cones everywhere.
Right,
yeah. I like these cones, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
6 miles of cones for 100 feet of road work.
So I want to watch this video. This is one that has been put out by some pro-life folks that's circling around the internet. It's a wonderful video. There's like 4 vignettes. Each vignette is talking about what Prop 3 would allow. Mm-hmm. And obviously, not everyone's going to, partake in all of this, but this is what would allow. And really, we would have something that is worse than Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. We would have something that made Michigan somewhat, I'm not going to say mandatory abortion, but everybody has to get in line behind abortion. Well, like doctors have to offer it, nurses have to participate in it, or else they don't get to work. Teachers have to know the protocols and then teach the protocols. Mm-hmm. And so every student's being exposed. It's like we become a super abortion state if Prop 3 passes.
It's the most extreme abortion law in the country right now. And it will make us the most, or one of the most extreme states on abortion. And obviously we have a governor right now who's running on this. This is her issue. She's running on this as a right for women, and this is the threat of it being taken away. Right. And, of course, Prop 3 also, and it might talk about in these videos, I haven't seen it yet, but it talks about minors having access to abortion without parental consent.
Well, they say sexual health. And so even like, for instance, we're going to see in the thing for a boy, if the boy is having gender issues, he can sterilize himself. The teacher has to make that, and then he doesn't have to tell his parents that. So this isn't just abortion. This goes into the sodomite crowd.
100%.
Right? Which with their type of sexual behavior, they're never going to need an abortion, but they want less kids, and then they want these kids to come and join their crowd, and the state's going to semi-mandate it and then fund it and then put everybody else in its umbrella, and then everybody else becomes a Nazi who's taken away rights. And so that's where we are with Prop 3. Yeah. And, some of the stuff that's been going against Prop 3 has just been saying it's too confusing. Well, it is confusing, But that's because people aren't imaginative to see just how evil it is.
Right.
I think the confusing part is that this is incredibly evil. Could this really be what is happening? And that's it's not confusing. It is that evil.
Right.
So we're going to watch each of these vignettes. We'll watch the vignette, and then you guys, make some comments on the vignette.
Michigan, this November 8th, you have the right to choose. And your choice will decide whether we wake up in a better Michigan or a Michigan that has been radically transformed.
Help me understand what's going on with you. You're just not yourself lately. Mom, 2 weeks ago I had an abortion. What? How? How is that possible? You're only 14. Your doctor didn't even tell me. My teacher said they wouldn't have to anymore since Prop 3 passed. I didn't know.
Here's a situation where a 14-year-old girl, for however reason, whatever reason, can go and get an abortion, and then they all say, rape and incest. Well, what if it was rape and incest? Shouldn't mom know?
Right.
Shouldn't something be reported?
Right.
And, so that's pure hypocrisy for them to say that. We've talked before that life begins at conception. That's proven in every gynecological handbook. And so therefore abortion, especially as birth control, is just self-interest. It's just covering your back. It's murder. And then they want to put out, well, what about rape and incest? And I would like to say, yeah, what about rape and incest? You got a 14-year-old girl. How'd she get pregnant? Mom doesn't have to know. Doctor doesn't have to report. The teacher has to mandate, the opportunities and options for her. And so, this is parental rights times 10.
Well, it's a fundamental attack on who do the kids belong to.
Yeah.
This is my child.
Right.
And so I want to know what they're going through, and I deserve the right to know. And nobody gets to make a permanent life-altering choice on my child without my consent.
We don't let 14-year-olds drive. We don't let 17-year-olds drink.
We don't
but
let
we're going to
smoke.
We're going to let 14-year-olds handle a lifelong decision that amounts to murder that could affect their body.
Yeah.
That's engaged in their morality and their family.
Their conscience and their soul.
And their conscience and their soul. And what about whoever did do the impregnating? If it, what about the father's rights and stuff as well here? So this is the destruction of society at the core. Yeah, if you rip up this girl's soul, she's never going to be the same. And she'll vote for you now for the rest of her life, because now the right to an abortion becomes a soothing of my conscience. That's what it is.
Right.
And so you're gonna own them through this process, just like we say if we open up the borders and let all these illegal aliens in, and the Democrats feed them, they'll vote Democrat now the rest of their life, and the Democrat is the party for the alien or whatever. And that's the same thing here. As we've established this culture and this right, you've got lifelong voters that's going to keep us in power. We could care less about them, because we'll say to you, rape or incest. But what happened to this girl? We don't know how this girl's pregnant, and yet the law is going to give her an opportunity to go take care of this, and nobody knows. Right. So somebody could push her to go do that. Even the teacher could push her to go do that, and then they never have to answer for the cause. So
unimaginable.
Yeah,
unimaginable.
And now, what do you tell a 14-year-old girl? She comes and says to you, Pastor, how do you handle that? Entirely different. What are your first thoughts, first process?
Go talk to your parents.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you're going to get parents involved in what's going on here and help a kid who's already going through a traumatic situation in their own life.
And I'm going to say, was this rape or incest?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Let's make sure there's an answering, there's a call, and then I'm going to say, you can have this child, and there's somebody waiting for this child that will love this child. I mean, you can talk about adoption. I mean, you could take this 90% the other way. Right. This is narrowing her in a 10% hole to try to drop her in.
Well, and you're telling me that if my kid doesn't do his homework, I'm going to get a call from the school.
Right.
But if my kid gets pregnant and gets an abortion, I'm not going to get a call from the school.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense
it's
at all.
insanity.
So it's deliberate and it's wrong.
And insanity doesn't say, hey, this is insanity. Insanity lies and says, hey, this is best procedure. All right, let's go to vignette number 2.
I just don't understand why my son wants to sterilize himself and there's nothing I can do about it.
What do you mean there's nothing you can do? He's only 10, and you're his mother.
Prop E14 passed and gave every individual the right to effectuate decisions about sterilization. His teacher told him that if he wants to transition, he can do this. There's nothing I can do. If he decides to go through with it, it's his choice.
I didn't know.
It's time to pull your kids out of public education because teachers are going to be under these laws. And I guarantee you that a good Christian school, maybe even the Catholic school, they're going to be like,
Right.
You know, we're not giving them these options. We're not putting the poster up and having the special class and all these other kinds of things. And so parents, they need to exercise their rights, you know, by defunding education. I noticed when they're putting that up, putting the proposition up on the screen there, you don't have time to read it, but I have, and it says that the right to reproductive freedom is what they call it. It's not necessarily health or the best decision. You're giving that to a 10 or 14-year-old, number one, which you know, a 17-year-old doesn't have that right to do things. A 15-year-old doesn't have right to do things, but you're putting that in their hands. And it says, shall not be infringed upon. This is like the Second Amendment. So that they're saying abortion is like a gun in your hand.
Right.
You have the right to bear arms, and you have the right to kill children. That's the way that they're equating this. And I mean, they're not selling it that way.
Well, and they're not being told or taught that you're killing a life. You're just making a medical choice, like getting your tonsils out.
Now, there are 10-year-old boys that if all this stuff is laid out to them about gender, they're going to go, that's stupid.
Yeah.
There's some 10-year-old boys that are like, that's stupid. Let's go play football. You know what I mean? But there is that 10-year-old boy who, void of other leadership and maybe subject to things that are suppressing their emotions or whatever else, are going to say, well, I think I could please someone. They'd be pleased with me. I'd be doing right. They could be directed into this as a 10-year-old.
Statistically, that we're seeing that, you know, these kids, you know, every kid from 6 years old and up, they want to find a group that they connect with. Some people find the athletes, so they become a jock. Some people find the computer nerds, so they become that, or whatever. You know, what happens is kids aren't socializing. They're going online. They're finding these chat rooms. These chat rooms of kids that are transgender, kids that are furries, or whatever.
They
these
may
things
be kids, or they may not be kids. They might be dirty old men.
Exactly. Right. And so they're finding this group of people that accept them and want them, and they get talked into these things, and they think, if I want to fit in with this group, I got to do these things. And of course, we understand as adults, like, this is a child, an adolescent mind trying to figure things out. The fact that the kid is having these thoughts, when parents, don't let your kids just have access to the internet. I mean, that's just
right.
But these kids are going through this. I think that's the most important thing, that there's an active parent involved in helping them through this. And again, a biblical understanding of the family. This is why we say the best culture is a Bible culture. Mom and a dad, healthy relationship, kids going through this. Let's sit down and have a conversation.
Right.
Let's see what the Bible says about it.
You can steer them through some of this stuff.
Help them through it. Pray with them and guide them through the process.
So you're hitting at a point that even the proposition of this commercial that we just saw is what an indictment on modern parenting.
Right.
Sure.
That a child can come to the point of this type of decision outside of the influence and guidance of their parent.
Right.
That the parent's so disconnected that, first of all, they have influential voices in their life that would lead a child to go to make a wholly unnatural decision because there's nothing about their biology that would push them this way. There's nothing about their makeup or the design of them that would push them in this direction. So this is an artificial desire that has been artificially put on them. And yet a child has been so wholly left to himself, or sold to the government or sold to the culture, that they could be influenced to the point now that a child would even desire to do this against the consent and knowledge of his parents.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that America, that is where we are at.
Yes.
That is where we're at. That is your sexual revolution. That is you hippies out there that raise your kids this way.
Yeah.
This is the fruit of your greed. This is the fruit of all of it.
Yeah.
This is where we've come. This everything that when you rejected Bible truth and you didn't listen to the preacher and you decided you were going to go your own way, this is the fruit. This is what you get.
And the reason that Pastor Jason is so adamant that I'm a pastor too, and I've dealt with these exact situations, is that these laws are umbrellas to protect the pedophile, the incestuous person, the rapist, the professional taking advantage of them, or the homosexual that's recruiting. And that's really what it's not couched in those words, but it's saying we're going to take secular humanization, we're going to weaponize it in the public schools, and then we're going to shoot it against Christian parenthood.
Right.
That really is it. And so, one thing is to vote no on Prop 3. Another thing is to execute parental rights. And there's a line that it doesn't matter who is the king or who's the authority. Parental authority and responsibility trumps that.
Oh yeah.
And that's got to be preached and understood. We've got upset parents in these concepts, but they're like, I didn't know. What can I do?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Imagine being there. You see that, and as a parent, I'm just listening. I have 6 kids. I'm hearing them say, my 10-year, I don't have a say. I'm thinking, how could anybody get to a point where you feel like you don't have a say in your 10-year-old, or you're that, like he said, that disconnected with, it's unreal. And the fact that that's where we are.
When my 10-year-old's about to take a butter knife and stick it in the electric plug, listen, I might tackle him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And people could say, oh, that's abuse or whatever else. But if I got a 10-year-old and he's about to cut off his manhood, I'm going to tackle him.
Right.
And whoever told him to do that, I'm going to tackle him as well, because it's self-defense in that regard. And so, this is just insanely and without using the words, it's protecting the pedophile and the homosexual and the incestuous rapist. It's protecting them in that regard as well. Let's watch the next one.
Thanks very much for coming in. Look in all the tests. Everything's going fine. Baby is very, very healthy. But I need to ask you before we go any further, are you sure this child is not going to cause you any mental health issues? Fear, anxiety, stress?
It's my 4th kid, so probably.
Well, if you feel that way, we can terminate this pregnancy for you.
How is that possible?
Well, now that Proposition 3 has passed, you have the right to terminate this pregnancy up to the time of a birth.
Really?
Yes, if it would be advisable for the protection of your mental health.
I didn't know.
So here's the other thing. There are industries that want to buy fetal material.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to spark industry and help industry, because if I can have this child up till the day it's supposed to be born, and then I can sell it for whatever purposes, scientific purposes, makeup purposes, medical purposes, right? They're making vaccines, using some of this stuff. Then you're helping a sick industry as well. If doctors are forced to have this piece of paper, if you're going to practice, and you've got to put this, even if you don't want to, but you have to put these options forward to somebody, then that puts you in the mix of having to do that. And then we already have a doctor and nurse shortage. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And so they have to put these things forward against their own will. They're almost selling it. And like most other things, like we were talking about with the vaccines, okay, if they have to almost sell it, are they getting a kickback on that? Mm-hmm. Do they have to report that as well? And so this is not fair to the medical profession. What do you think, guys?
Well, I think statistically, the overwhelming majority of these abortions happening in minority communities. And so there's an agenda there as well.
Yeah.
There's an agenda where this is how we keep the minorities down.
It's going to enhance the true racist. Absolutely. That says, right. let's kill black babies or Mexican babies.
If we're talking incentive, the powers that be, the evil behind this, that's part of their thing is let's minimize minority influence in America and minority populations in America. And they know that when we legalize this stuff, these minority populations are I don't know the exact statistic, but the overwhelming majority of murders in black communities are abortions.
It's population control as well by those that are, wanting to push population control.
According to Great Lakes Justice Centers, our good friends Wagner and Coleman, they have a fact sheet out on Proposal 3, and one of the points they make here is because of the all-encompassing exceptions, the amendment effectively guarantees the right to abortion at any time right up to the moment of birth. Mm-hmm. Further, it effectively guarantees the right to partial birth abortion and the right to terminate a child's life in the womb at any time based upon a child's disability, gender, race, or for any other reason. So this is wholesale. So not only what y'all are talking about in the selling of fetal material and all those different things, but literally a child can be murdered at any point, at any point. And so what is partial birth abortion? That means the baby's if you've seen a baby being born before, the baby's head comes out first.
Right.
You chop off the baby's head.
Yeah.
While the toe is still in the womb.
Yeah.
Technically.
Yeah.
And you can kill that
crying.
baby. So that is what you're voting for.
Yeah.
You're voting for that to happen in America legally. And if you vote yes for Proposition 3, that is, God will not hold you guiltless.
Right.
That is on you.
Absolutely.
That is on you. That's
on our nation.
That is on, but that's on every individual voter, because now this is an exercise of authority.
Yeah.
And so if you're voting yes on Prop 3, then just know you are voting for children to be murdered with one toe in the womb.
Right.
Put that in your head. You said yes.
Right.
What would only make this thing equitable is if it would require those voting yes to actually do the deed.
Right. Right. Well, so many of the political ads that are going on now, whether it's endorsing or criticizing a candidate or out for Prop 3, are these medical professionals, doctors in their white suits, and they're saying the government should not get involved in my medical decisions. In other words, your right to murder a baby.
Stay out of my body.
And I'll tell you what I think. I think you, number one, have participated in this. You've done these things, and you're getting off on it, and you want it. It's my right to exercise medical lordship over people, because while you might have a doctor that is forced to do this and doesn't want to do this and has his conscience, you probably have many doctors like, yeah, because I'm getting $10 a pop, or I'm getting this, and then you get off on power. I mean, a dictator doesn't mind if 500 people die, right, so that he stays in power. And so the doctor pool is getting smaller and smaller. It's a powerful thing, and why would I mind if 500 children die and my pocket's lined and I'm have this elevated over life and death? I'm elevated over life and death, and that makes me important. That I can do that.
Pharaoh didn't care.
Right.
Herod didn't care.
Right.
So, I mean, this is not new.
Right. And the fact that you could have a little demagogue doctor,
right,
participating in this stuff, and we know that has happened. You've had killer nurses and surgeons and things like that, and they're making decisions that aren't theirs to make.
And the average everyday American has been taught for multiple generations now that this is just a medical procedure.
Yeah.
And this is why we're trying to break this out. Hopefully, you're listening, you understand that this is far beyond a medical procedure. Right. This is murder.
It's murder.
This is murder. This is a
murder.
Life. What happened to follow the science?
Right.
The most basic biology will tell you that at conception, that's life. There's life breathing. There's life happening. Yeah. So when you terminate a life, that is the definition of murder.
And that's not being promoted in the media. It's not being promoted in education. It's not being promoted on social media.
No, it's not being taught.
No, so our culture has been debased. Let's watch this last little vignette.
You are the county prosecutor. My 15-year-old granddaughter is dead, and you tell me you can't do anything to the person who killed her?
I understand your frustration, but since Proposition 3 passed, the state shall not penalize, prosecute, or otherwise take adverse action against someone for aiding or assisting a pregnant individual in exercising their right to reproductive freedom with their voluntary consent. There's just nothing I can do.
I didn't know.
Basically, people are supposed to be protectant of you. Parents, teachers, doctors, nurses, they're in a situation where there's nothing I can do. They can no longer protect, right? Mm-hmm. And so then who's protecting? I mean, this is all-encompassing state power by a governor whose attorney general is a married lesbian with children, debased in their mind and their thinking, especially of the law. So the law is a means for them to have power and execute control. Mm-hmm. And so Prop 3 just elevates that and permanizes that in the worst way with innocence. And so we are at a time of Pharaoh. We are at a time of Herod. And, I think passing this then forces the Lord, as in the time of Noah, with Sodom and Lot. It forces it's not us bringing judgment or saying that it's us saying, whoa, stop, because God's going to have to judge Michigan, let alone the United States, but Michigan for taking the lead in this and doing it. Michigan has always prided itself on its independence, and we've gotten around enough in Michigan to know there's a lot of conservative movement in Michigan, but it's also just, I think, a lot of apathy. Just leave me alone. And so freedom becomes apathy, and that's what happens in the state of Michigan. So Prop 1, Prop 2, Prop 3 are all dangerous, are all leftist, are all totalitarian, are all evil, and give way to a great capacity of sin and then protection thereof for the perpetrators of that. And I don't see how, I guess I could say this 20 years ago, I wouldn't see that this even could come to pass, but I don't see how this could come to pass without there being a real breakup of society. And the ones who are good are going to be called evil, and are going to be sought after as trying to undermine society, rebels and terrorists and all those different kinds of things.
Well, and that's, as you say that, the breakup of society, I'm already thinking, we're praying, we're going to work, we're going to get the word out that people need to vote no in Prop 3. If we feel a little bit of hopelessness in it, or like, not hopeless, but like we're pushing against the tide, it's true, because the tide, we all discern that the weight of the world, the weight of the culture, the weight of the tide is moving in this direction. We are literally trying to stop the flow of this river that's going this way. If it does pass, you're gonna see initially over probably the next year an exodus from public schools. As people become aware of this, but really it's going to require the deconstruction of our modern society.
Right.
That's the only way you're going to be able to fight this, because the only way you're going to be able to now, in the environment of Prop 3, is to remove people, and that includes children and everything, from the influence of these voices completely. And so, that's the next step after this, if it were to happen, because now the government is not going to be an advocate for life. The only way you're going to be able to do it is by doing the work in individual lives of people and convince them not to go this way.
China had their one-child policy. And so if you were a married couple, you could have one child. You didn't have to go and get permission and certification and licensing so that you had this one child. But if you had the second child, then the state was mandated, and it would kill this child. It was a state mandated killing. Now, there were a lot of people who didn't participate in that, like against the state, but then they had to live this lie, and they had to justify it, or they had to pay these taxes, or they were brought before magistrates and everything. Well, then now, even though China has 1 billion people, they're still saying we actually don't have enough to perpetrate this kind of growth that we want. Now they're saying they're actually having a population problem because, it's an aged population. And the other thing is then all their kids are only kids. And you know as well as I do, you grew up with brothers and sisters. It helps you get adjusted. And you have all these only childs. And so even though they have mandated military service, they got a bunch of soft mama boys who play video games coming in to be in the military, and they can't handle it. And they got mental illness. Guys are all just saying, I'm crazy or whatever. Their suicide levels are high. And so, these kinds of things are horrible for society. And they're going to go to a place where you can only have one child, or you have to go, you're married, you have to go to the state and get this certification. And now you want a child, you have to go through the hospital and get this prepaid certification to have this child. And all that. I mean, that is going to be how sick, where it goes, because people want to evolve into this Star Trek society. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where we can all go to Mars, but you're going to have to play the game. And I don't think that's ever going to be accepted, but I think that's going to be in people's minds. Yeah. And that's where, they're going to want to go with that. So, we believe life begins at a conception. Abortion is murder. If I'm a doctor, or I'm a fireman, and there's an accident and a pregnant woman's trying to have a baby, and I'm trying to save everybody, and then I'm at the decision where, what do I do? That's a horrible decision. That guy shouldn't be prosecuted for the decision at that point in time. He's trying to save somebody, and he makes a decision. I get that. And I get that there is that 1 in a million freakish situation where a decision has to be made. Someone here is going to die. Right. And Pastor Georgia says, 2 people are hanging by a rope, and, one's got to get cut. But you don't go into the situation like that. Doctors are supposed to swear to protect life for everybody. Yeah. And nowadays, medicine's so good. You can cesarean that baby. You can get people to a hospital. You can do, and so those little minor infractions that make us so cold because we say no exceptions. Right. The reality is nobody's going to prosecute that. That's something special that gets looked at after the fact, and nobody's going to prosecute anybody for that. But that ought not to, that once in a million thing ought not to be the thing that drives, all law and everything else.
You're talking about, the exception, and it's always, in the case of rape and incest. Right. But this law is going to increase rape and incest.
Yes.
prohibits enforcement of criminal statutes against statutory rape and child sexual abuse and other similar statutes. In other words, sex between a 12-year-old girl and a 45-year-old man will now be protected by this new right so long as the child consents.
And that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
There's no way, because that girl doesn't have to say anything,
No.
in there. And so, Michigan doesn't have a death penalty. That's in our Constitution, and it's the only thing in the Constitution that says this can never be changed in the Constitution, which means Michigan probably will never have a death penalty. But the reality is, if you have a rapist or an incestuous type of person, that needs to get maximum effect of the law every single time, but it's just not going to. And so, obviously, you have to vote the candidates and vote your conscience, but I think the candidate's weak, and so they have to put these propositions underneath them. And these propositions are not at all what they say they are. That's why they're confusing. Mm-hmm. There's an agenda here. It's an evil one. I'm voting no on Prop 1, 2, and 3, and I'm probably going to end up having to vote for the person that stands there with me.
Yeah.
Even whether they're a great candidate or not. If it was a buffoon in a clown suit, but they were saying no to Prop 1, 2, 3. That'd probably be unfortunately the best.
Yeah.
The best that I could do there. So, final words to you guys.
The Bible says, Psalm 127, "Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are the children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them." Yeah. I think
happy, blessing, and prosperity. The shooting of you're going to be more prosperous with those arrows shot out from behind you.
God's design is that to be happy and to do our duty on this earth is to be blessed with children, to raise them right in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, to teach them to be fruitful citizens of society, so that the things that we believe and teach and that the Bible that we stand on as our foundation lives on forever, and that we continue to perpetuate what God wants to happen on this earth. And so children are a blessing. That the question that was asked in that vignette is this child going to add personal mental stress to you? Of course it is.
Yeah, right.
I have a quiver full of them. They add stress to my life.
I'm going bald, that's for sure. Yeah.
But they are the blessing and the heritage of the Lord. It's his reward. And so, it's that idea of this selfish society. Does it affect you? Well, put yourself aside, do what's right. Listen, you have a child and you raise that child. There's nothing greater. There's nothing more wonderful.
You got anything to add to that, Pastor Georges?
He that followeth after righteousness and mercy shall find life, righteousness, and honor. Your vote is authority. You have a responsibility to God to exercise authority according to his righteousness. You're held accountable for the way you vote. And so, that's how you have to approach this. And so, I can unapologetically, I can definitively say, particularly on Prop 3, this is against the Word of God. It is against the Word of God. So if you claim to be a Bible believer, you got to vote no on 3. That's why we put a sign out in front that says, "Believe Bible truth." Right. Because if you believe Bible truth, then you will vote no.
It's not just a political issue. This is a moral issue.
It's a moral issue.
This is not something
This is the soul of Michiganders on trial here. This is what we're about to determine what kind of people we are.
Right.
Are we barbarians or are we not? Are we civilized or are we not? This is and you can mask it. We can mask it in whatever we want to mask it in, of modernity and enlightenment and liberality. But at the end of the day, it's barbaric.
It's important that you watch these podcasts and give us feedback. We always like you to share these podcasts so that they grow and that people are getting this biblical thought in cultural issues. But as we do this recording, there's 3 weeks before election time in Michigan, and hopefully this would help people across the country. But it really is time for you to share these podcasts and share this one in particular about Prop 1, 2, and 3. I hope that we have educated you. I hope that we have motivated you to really be clear in your conscience on what to vote and how to vote. That obviously is yours, but we're voting no on Prop 1, 2, and 3. Go to BibleNation.org. Go to our website, and there's articles and products, and of course all our podcasts there. So we'd love to hear from you about these issues as well. And remember, the best culture is a Bible culture. It's proven, and it works.